Hey everyone, thank you again for listening to my new journey. So, the last episode, we talked about blaming and guilt, the shock of going through loss and tragedy. I think tragedy can come in so many different forms. Tragedy can be the loss of somebody. It can be PTSD that you go through due to a tragic event. Anyway, there's a lot of emotions and feelings that go through that you go through as you grieve and go through the process of healing. After that, you go through denial. Like, how does this ever happen to me? There's a numbness to the world, and you don't necessarily see how life can go on. And as I've met people that have lost a child, there's very similar quality. We all belong to the most shitty group that anybody would ever want to belong to. And I've met moms and dads and brothers and sisters through these events, and it's helped me move through each one of these steps. Not to say I've been perfect, because there are several times that I feel like I take one step forward and feel really good, and then something will happen and I'll take 10 steps back. And it's a slippery slide. I think that you suffer from a form of depression no matter what. You're depressed because your way of life has changed. There's that emptiness. There's always going to be a missing part of you. A parent should never bury their child. I remember going to one of Logan's friends' funerals. In fact, his name was Logan. This is about a year before Logan passed away. And he unfortunately had committed suicide. And the church pastor, priest, bishop, whatever he was at that time, decided to talk about not just how wonderful this child was in life, but also talked about some of those really, really taboos of Utah. And I know I brought that up in the first episode, the taboos, and we're going to talk about that some more. But knowing that there's other parents and people that go through the same shitty loss, it reassures me and it gives you some comfort. You can find some outreach programs that are good for people. I found a lot of mine in almost like a group therapy where I was feeling down and I needed to surround myself with people in the same shitty group. And I think that helped me understand that it was okay, that my process in grieving was okay, that it wasn't wrong. And one of the things that I learned, and I've continued to learn, is that everybody grieves differently. There are grievers that can hold it in for their whole life and stay stern. There's grievers that you bounce back and forth. I mean, there's always going to be the moments that you're really, really good, and then there's things that will take you back. And grieving, the process is different for everybody. Somebody may go freaking crazy at the beginning and then be able to process it and accept it in the next step. And some people accept death a lot easier than others. And not to say that any death is any worse than another, but one of the things I talked to a mom about that lost her son due to cancer was that her process in grieving was definitely different than mine. She knew that her son was going to pass. And ironically, she was able to build herself to that point and knew that the time that she had with her son was limited. So she made every memory such a big deal, knowing that that's what she had to hold on to for the rest of her life when that child passed. But her grieving, I feel like she was able to jump steps, where mine was that shock of the loss and then like, how do you do life? There wasn't a way of steps to say, hey, your child just died yesterday. The next day you're supposed to do these things. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. The wrong way is to grieve unhealthy. And I have definitely done it that way too. And I'm not ashamed to tell everyone, that there are unhealthy ways to grieve. I have thrown fits. I have kicked a wall. You just sometimes it builds up, and that loss, and you explode. And that was more earlier on, right after all the tragic events. But now, handling the grief and the loss, although still emotional, especially this month, I know when I'm on a downward path. I know if something has set me off and my healthy thinking isn't there. So then I have to fight even harder to get myself back up to that healthy mindset. So like through this, like I said, I started this nonprofit, and it gave me some sense of fulfillment, and I guess some part of me acceptance that my son and my sister were gone. And with that, it allowed me to give back. And through this time, I think that's probably been the most healthiest way for me to heal. A lot of times I do a lot of that by myself. I mean, for those that are grieving over the loss, you want to have your whole family involved, and you want to have this whole support group go through your process of grieving with you. However, it was a shock to find that not everybody grieves the same way. I grieved totally different than my kids do. I grieve totally different than my spouse does. I've grieved totally different than my parents have. And everybody grieves in their own time. I just hope that it's all healthy. So part of my grieving and acceptance through this whole process was starting the nonprofit and finding families that needed a helping hand. Those families that lost a child like me. And when I started Logan Loved and the Healing Hearts Foundation, I really didn't look at how I was going to do it. It was kind of like I knew 2 weeks after Logan passed that I was here to start a nonprofit and to help families to go through the same shitstorm I've gone through and my family's gone through, and to hold their hand and to tell them that there is a brighter light at the end of this really dark tunnel. And sometimes it's really there to just listen to them, to be that person that isn't telling them how to grieve or that there's a right or wrong way to grieve. But most of the time, these families I've met through my nonprofit have been families that I relate to. They've lost a child due to all different reasons. Some of them are struggling a lot worse than others, but we relate and we sit and we cry together and we talk. We become friends, and it's brought me to a spot where I feel like I needed to start getting awareness out there, because through something I thought was going to be so, I don't know, being reborn, I guess, and a new purpose, I found a lot of issues, a lot of sadness and things that shouldn't be happening. So I went out, I started Logan Loved and this nonprofit, Healing Hearts Foundation, to circle myself with people and to give back to people that have lost children or loved ones, mostly children. But as I visited these families throughout the year, and most of them were just from word of mouth, I found that there was a very common element and a lot of things that I feel that if people talked about them, not that it would change the outcome, but it could change the outcome to children that are still present and with us. And a lot of those taboos are things that I've learned recently that Utah really we suffer from. We really are a sheltered state. Our children are really, unfortunately, naive, and there's a lot of predators out there. There are bullies, and this happens everywhere. But some of these subjects are things that I want to talk about in the next episodes that I found during this journey, good and bad. I mean, the good thing is that I have seen and met so many amazing people that have built me up to this place where I feel like I can share my story, but then also have built me up to know that there might be some people that don't like the story very much. And I'll tell you in the next couple episodes, because there's some shocking things that I have found in our own state, our own communities, that are so concerning. And it doesn't happen everywhere. It doesn't happen you think it happens to in another state. You think it happens to people in another city or in different communities, but it's happening in our own backyards, in our own houses, and it's time for a change. And I feel that through my nonprofit and helping others, I've gained the knowledge of some of these taboos that I definitely want to address. So I welcome you to come back to my next episode, and we'll reveal some of these taboos. Thank you and take care.